I gotta be honest with you here, this ain't an episode I've been looking forward to. I ain't seen it in a while on account of remembering it to be kinda, as the kids say, problematic. But watching it again for this, I think maybe I was being too harsh on it. We'll get into all of that as we take a look at, in a respectful way, Mud's Women. Hit it. Hey! So this was one of the scripts that was considered for the second pilot. The other two were Where No Man Has Gone Before, which is what got made, and The Omega Glory, which gets made, but it ain't until late in season 2. Believe me, I got a lot to say about that one, but we gotta wait for it to come around for that. Since we can't seem to hold on to a navigator, we got a new face in the right chair. The, interesting-looking Jim Goodwin as Lieutenant Farrell. We'll see how long he lasts. This episode has all the markings of an effort to appeal to a wider set of viewers. You got the pretty ladies, the titular Mud is this flamboyant pirate type, and not really a Pirates of the Caribbean pirate, more like a Pirates of Penzance kind of pirate. Could easily be seen bellowing a baritone ballad to open Act 2, you know what I mean? Don't worry, the alliteration is at no extra charge. And finally, the last act of the show has a very much Western feel to it. Seems like a good 80% of scripted non-comedy television back in the 60s was Westerns. Even Gene famously said he wanted Star Trek to be a wagon train to the stars, so you could see this part drawing the cowboy crowd somewhat. So there's a lot of stuff there to appeal to folks that didn't think science fiction would be their thing. And this episode does a good job of showing that sci-fi ain't gotta be all about robots and space and lasers and whatnot. So without further ado, let's jump into the plot. In what English professors call in medias res, we join a story already in progress that has the Enterprise playing police car, chasing an unregistered ship into an asteroid belt that apparently has a scholar rating of 3.5, which, if you look it up, puts it on the level of rock fight in a Three Stooges movie. Well, the ship burns out its engines trying to get away and starts drifting in the asteroids, causing the Enterprise to strain its own engines to extend the shields out to protect the ship from getting smashed to bits. While they're doing that, Scotty manages to beam aboard an elaborately dressed guy, and then resets, and just as the Enterprise's power systems fail and an asteroid hits their ship, grabs the rest of the crew, 3 lovely women. So lovely, in fact, all the human males in the transporter room turn into cartoon wolves with their hearts beating out of their chests. Spock don't get what the big deal is at first, but quickly figures out why everybody but him is sweating and drooling all of a sudden. The big guy, in a deodorant soap marshmallow breakfast cereal kind of way, says his name's Leo Walsh, and he was running because he thought the Enterprise was hostile. Well, Spock takes Zorro McBlackbeard and the Andrews sisters down to see the captain, so Kirk can eat this guy's lunch. And it's there that Walsh identifies the ladies as not so much his crew as his cargo. Kirk confines him to quarters pending a hearing, while Kirk assesses the whole power situation. Pulling the stunt with extending the shields has burned out all but one lithium crystal, yeah, we're going to talk about that, and even that one has a hairline fracture at its base, which, as we all know, is like, bad. Basically, they ain't going nowhere until they get more lithium, and as luck would have it, there's a lithium mining operation on Rigel 12, which is just close enough for them to make it. Well, just as the hearing is about to get going, Walsh tells the ladies that they shouldn't lie when questioned, but also that they shouldn't submit to a medical exam, which don't sound fishy to nobody. The hearing starts, and the Enterprise's lie detector finds out that this guy's name ain't Walsh, but rather Harcourt Fenton Mudd. But you can call him Harry. And he's engaged in the business of wiving settlers. Basically, he takes ladies who come from areas that don't got a lot of marriage prospects and brings them to other places which don't got the female kind of marriage prospects. But he insists that the ladies are all taking part of their own free will, and they all confirm that. He's shown to have an extensive criminal history, been sentenced to psychiatric treatment, and that the effectiveness of said treatment is in doubt. Kirk charges Mudd with driving without a license, running from the cops, and not having his ship's identity beam turned on. Basically, he's my uncle. Kirk says he's going to hand Mud over to the authorities at the first opportunity, and just as the hearing is wrapping up, the last crystal burns out, and the Enterprise is now running on batteries. Kirk orders that the miners on Rigel 12 be notified that the Enterprise is on its way. Mud overhears this and immediately hatches a plot, knowing that the miners will be isolated and lonely, and more importantly, considering how clearly important lithium crystals are to starships, very, very rich. Stuck in his quarters, Mud assigns the ladies tasks that are going to help him with his plot. He sends Ruth to go get information from McCoy about the health of the miners. While she's in there, she walks by a medical scanner and it goes a little haywire. McCoy can't figure it out, but the strangeness of it does seem to help him snap out of the spell she's got him under a little bit. Magda he sends out to get a communicator so as he can talk directly to the miners. It don't take much for this guy to give it up either. Seriously, that guy is so fired. Elsewhere on the ship, Kirk enters his quarters to find Eve there. She puts the move on our captain, but her will gives out and she don't exactly say what Mud wanted her to do, but she does admit that whatever it was, Mud put her up to it and she can't bring herself to do it. She runs out and runs back to Mud's quarters. When she gets there, she says she's feeling sick and then it feels like, quote, it's time, whatever that means. Suddenly, all three ladies seem to age considerably and lose that magical allure they had only moments before. Mud tears up his quarters looking for a pillbox he hid so that it wouldn't get confiscated, finds it in the mattress, and gives a red crystalline pill they refer to as the Venus drug to Magda and Ruth, but Eve seems to be reluctant to take it. Some persuasion from Mud gets her to acquiesce, and all three ladies return to their former unnatural loveliness. The Enterprise arrives at Rigel 12, and the miners beam up. Kirk offers them fair payment for some crystals, and they say they'd rather have the ladies that Mud's got with him, and also drop the charges against Mud. Kirk says not no, but hell no. Childress, the leader of the miners, says, well then your ship's toast, I guess. Kirk is left with no choice. Kirk and Spock beam down to a very environmentally inhospitable Rigel 12 with Mud, and find a very awkward dance going on with the ladies and the miners. No kidding, it's difficult to watch. Childress blows off Kirk about the crystals, Eve is feeling bad about this whole situation, and the guy she was hanging out with gets jerky about it, which sets Eve off and she runs out of the saloon into a huge dust storm. Childress goes out after her and manages to find her and bring her back to his place. He wakes up to find that she's cooking up some food and to straighten up the place, and for whatever reason, Childress decides to be a major about it. During one of his complaint tirades, he mentions that it's hard to clean his pans without sufficient water. She tells him, hey, there's a giant sandstorm outside all the time, so why don't you put the pans out there and they'll get sandblasted clean? Well, he goes out and hangs up the pans, and when he gets back, the Venus drug has worn off. And Childress, just when you thought he couldn't get any more of a total jerk, takes that bet and shifts it into 6th gear. It's about that time Kirk and Mud show up and tell Childress about the Venus drug. Childress ain't happy, especially when he finds out that the other ladies are on the drug too, and they're already married to the other miners through a Chapel of Love style wedding conducted through subspace communications. Ain't the future swell? Well, Eve snatches a Venus drug from Mud and takes it as she berates Childress for wanting unnatural looks more than somebody real, and she turns beautiful again. Childress laments that it's fake, which is rich coming from Ralph Cramden over here, but turns out Kirk switched out the real drug with a placebo. When Eve acted with the self-confidence she thought the drug was giving her, she naturally became more beautiful. And Childress says he wants Eve to stick around. He gives Kirk the crystals they need, and after a little wacky banter between Kirk and Mud, we roll credits. Great stuff. This one ain't an amazing episode, but there are some fun lines in here.
Oh, with the sound of male ego, you travel halfway across the galaxy and it's still the same song.
This is especially good after Childress is ramping up the stereotypical male jerk routine, but I have a feeling this line resonated with every female viewer of this episode. You'll love to see it.
I'm happy the affair is over. A most annoying, emotional episode.
Smack right in the old eye. Oh, I'm sorry. In your case, it would be about here.
fact that my internal arrangement differs from yours, Doctor, pleases me no end.
So if you ever wanted to know who fired the first shot between Spock and McCoy, you have your answer. McCoy makes a lighthearted and medically accurate joke, and Spock comes back with the attitude, setting up a dynamic between those two that will last as long as Star Trek itself. Spock is actually a lot of fun to watch in this episode. He's still got a little of that smirky smiliness that he has in the two pilots, and it's put to good use in this episode. My favorite Spock moment is this right here.
Vessel, its captain, and 3 unusual females. These women have a mysterious magnetic effect on the male members of my crew, including myself.
You don't gotta say a word. I love it.
There's only one kind of woman.
Or man, for that matter.
You either believe in yourself, or you don't.
Okay, so those of you who are mathematically inclined probably already noticed that that's 2 kinds of people. Those that believe in themselves and those that don't, but we'll let it slide. It's a little on the nose, pretty much summing up the message of the whole thing, just in case you weren't too swoofed. But that being said, it is a good message. Kind of. We'll talk more about that later. Not only does this episode tee up the bickering relationship between McCoy and Spock, it establishes another great McCoy staple, his fear of the transporter.
What's wrong?
I don't know, sir. Are those 3 lithium crystals gone?
Fast it'll take longer on battery.
Never did trust this thing in the first place.
It's interesting to me that, as forward-thinking as Gene Roddenberry was, that he would put in a character, particularly a central character like McCoy, that was afraid of technology in any way. I mean, it makes sense for somebody to be scared of those things. They're basically murder boxes if you think about it. But it's surprising that he'd have a character just come out and say it like that. The Goof. Good bit of goof in this episode. Not the most of any episode, but not the least by a long shot. Let's start with something science related. Now, I'm no dummy when it comes to science, but I got a cousin who's a real egghead. So I figured I'd bring him in to talk about this one. So let me introduce you to Possum Science. How you doing, P.S.?
I am well, Rob. All systems nominal. I hope you are the same.
I'm making it. So you was talking about this very thing at the cookout last weekend, so I figured I'd get you on the show to talk about the asteroid field in this episode.
Absolutely, Rob. I'm delighted you were paying attention. The deliciousness of your mother's tater salad, as she calls it, can be quite distracting.
No kidding, right?
So, an asteroid belt. It is a collection of giant rocks, typically in orbit around a star in place of a planet. It can contain millions of asteroids, some modest in size and others quite enormous. In many science fiction epics, such as Star Trek, such asteroid belts are typically depicted as being rather congested with asteroids, such that to traverse one means to place oneself in imminent peril of pulverization by asteroid. However, nothing could be further from the truth. In even the most congested areas of our own asteroid belt, the average distance between rocks is some 600,000 miles, almost 3 times the distance between your Earth and its moon. Therefore, one would be hard-pressed to find a point within the asteroid belt where one could even see more than one asteroid at a time. Indeed, it is quite conceivable that Mr. Mudd could have successfully traversed his asteroid field without even realizing he had done so.
That's perfect. I knew it was a good idea to get you on. Thanks so much, P.S. Listen, we're going to do a lot of these, so I may need to call on you from time to time. Hope that's okay.
Of course, Rob. Feel free to call on me anytime, any space.
All right, take it easy, P.S. Later. Did he say your Earth? Anyways, moving on. Another thing is we establish on the surface of Rigel 12 that the miners live in these Silver Stream-looking habitats. But when we go inside them, they look like caves. What's that about? Well, turns out there was a misunderstanding. They was going to show that the trailers were just entrances to underground areas where the miners was living, but they also had a scene where some of them had to be looking out a window, and then they had to set up the door so that it went out into the dust storm. So the cave thing just wasn't going to work. But they'd already had the cave walls built, so I guess they just kind of hoped nobody would notice. Another bit of goof is just how almost comically brutish Childress acts in this episode. After valiantly going out to get Eve, When he wakes up, he turns into Bender's dad from Breakfast Club. And that's while Eve was still in beauty mode. He don't even know about the Venus drug yet. The best part is when Kirk and Mudge show up and he immediately goes, "I didn't touch her." Like, who asked you, Archie Bunker? Maybe they was trying to have him irritated that he had to risk his life to save Eve from recklessly running away, but he goes so overboard with it that it's hard to believe that these two aren't going to end up as Al and Peggy Bundy at best. You know, that wouldn't be a bad idea for a sitcom. The Childresses and the Cave Trailer. Tell me the CW wouldn't eat that up. Ruminations. So, the lithium crystal thing. Later it gets changed to dilithium, of course, and I'm sure somewhere there's a canon reason why they're referred to as just lithium in this episode, as well as the lithium cracking station in Where No Man, but I like that they're establishing details of this universe. But without pointing too hard at it, you know? Yeah, it's a central problem in the episode, but they do a good job of making it seem almost mundane, technologically speaking. Like they burned out the transmission or something. They throw in some lines to give you a hint at why these crystals are so important, but they're realistic lines, and not some Bunsen honeydew scientist explaining things everybody else should already know kind of monologue. I like that. So the message of this episode is, believe in yourself, and that will make you more attractive. Believing in yourself, that's a good message. But I'm not sure I'm on board with the "and that will make other people like you better" back half of that. I'd feel more comfortable with it if it was more like, believe in yourself, and if you're interested in attracting anybody else at all, chances are they'll be the right kind of person for you. That would just sit better with me. Whether Eve believes in herself or not, she's stuck on a planet with one guy she just met and who hasn't exactly made the greatest first impression. And nobody's worried about how attractive Childress is to her, you know? By the message's logic, that guy clearly don't believe in himself at all, as ugly a person as that guy is. And I know this is early on in the whole Star Trek thing, but even the best version of this message seems a little, I don't know, pedestrian for Star Trek. Usually the messages have a bit more philosophical and moralistic oomph to them, you know? This feels like an after-school special that should have Maureen McCormick and a handful of Van Pattens in it or something. After Where No Man and Corbomite, this one just feels kind of small. Hopefully the next one will get us back on track, right? So there you have it, Mud's Women. This is one where opinions are all over the place, so tell me, what do you think of this episode? Let me know down there in the comments. I'm genuinely interested in hearing you guys' take on this one. If you liked the review of the episode, give it a thumbs up and the like button down there. It'll make Possum Science really feel good that you dug it. Also, if you ain't subscribed yet, there's still time. Scooch that mouse over and click that subscribe button and ring-a-ling that bell so you don't miss all of the excitement of watching stuff with me, Possum Rob. Shatner's acting talents are going to be put to the test in the next one as a transporter accident splits him into two Kirks. So we'll see you back here for that. Until then, Possum friends are awesome friends. Take it easy, alright? Later.